Welcome to the Bible's Most Quoted Verses, where we explore the scriptures people quote most and the powerful themes behind them, tracing how familiar verses connect to the larger story of the Bible, ultimately pointing us to Jesus Christ. I'm your host, Gary Palmer. Today, we're diving into one of the Bible's most cherished yet often misunderstood passages. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to The Deep Dive. Today, we are tackling something that feels incredibly relevant no matter where you are in life. We're zooming in on what is arguably the most famous command in history.
It is certainly the most repeated one.
I came across this number in the research packet, and I had to double check it. 366 times.
Wow.
Or roughly that amount. It kind of depends on the translation. That's how often the Bible issues the command to fear not or do not be afraid.
Which is just staggering. I mean, that's one for every day of the year, plus an extra for leap year.
Exactly. And that puts this topic squarely in the crosshairs of what we try to do when we analyze the Bible's most quoted verses. We aren't just interested in the sound bites, the coffee mug slogans. We want to understand the context. Why do these words endure?
And why the repetition? Why so intense?
Right. It raises a fundamental question about human nature, doesn't it?
It does. If you have to tell someone to do something, or in this case, stop doing something, over 300 times, it suggests the message isn't sinking in.
My initial thought was, okay, is the repetition here? Because humans are naturally brave and just need a little coaching. But the sources we pulled suggest the exact opposite.
Yeah, we are looking at a theology of fear not. And to build that theology, we've synthesized a really diverse stack of sources.
A great mix.
We have the 19th century eloquence of Charles Spurgeon, modern pastoral insights from Hamrick and John MacArthur,
the narrative theology of the BibleProject,
and the verse-by-verse breakdown from David Guzik. So a mix of the old guard and the new school.
And they all seem to agree on the diagnosis. We need this command because fear is our default factory setting.
That is the consensus. Pastor Hamrick from Cornerstone Chapel frames this perfectly. He uses an acronym for F.E.A.R. that I think a lot of people might have heard, but he applies it specifically to this biblical command.
Oh, I love a good acronym. Lay it on me.
False events appear real.
False events appear real. Okay, let's unpack that. Because when I'm scared, the event feels very, very real.
Well, Hamrick argues that fear is often an impulsive, emotional reaction to the unknown. It's a projection.
Right.
You aren't reacting to what is happening in the room with you right now. You're reacting to a movie playing in your head about what might happen next week.
It's the 3.0 a.m. spiral. You wake up, you remember you send an email that sounded slightly snippy, and suddenly your brain convinces you that you're going to get fired.
Lose the house.
And end up living in a cardboard box. Yeah.
Precisely. The event living in a box is false. It hasn't happened.
Yeah.
But the physiological reaction, the sweating palms, the racing heart, that is very real.
So Hamrick's point is that we suffer more in our imagination than in reality.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
God is commanding us to stop hallucinating disasters. But here's the critical distinction, and this is where the theology gets really interesting.
Okay.
We often treat fear not as a nice suggestion. Like a friend putting a hand on your shoulder and say, hey, don't worry about it, it'll be fine.
Sure, it's comfort.
But Hamrick, and really all our sources, they emphasize that in the text, it is not a suggestion. It is an imperative. It is a divine command.
But that feels impossible, doesn't it? I mean, if I'm terrified, I can't just flip a switch because someone ordered me to.
Right.
It feels like commanding someone to stop bleeding or stop being hungry.
And that is exactly the tension Hamrick addresses. He notes that in the biblical narrative, God never gives a command without providing the enablement.
Enablement.
That's the key theological term here.
So the ability to actually do it.
Right. If God commands a bird to fly, he gives it wings. If he commands a human to fear not, he supplies the resource to make fearlessness possible. He isn't demanding you conjure up willpower you don't have. He's pointing you to a resource you haven't noticed.
Okay, so let's talk about that resource. Because when we look at the context of these verses, the Bible's most quoted, these people weren't just stressed about emails. They were facing legitimate catastrophes.
Absolutely. Take the context of Isaiah, which Hamrick brings up. The Israelites were facing displacement. They were looking down the barrel of an imagined war that was about to become very real.
Exile, death, loss of national identity.
And then you have Joshua. I think David Guzik's insight on this was one of my favorite parts of the research.
Oh, yeah.
Joshua 1.9 is everywhere. I think it's on every graduation card I've ever bought. Be strong and courageous.
It's a classic.
Yeah.
But Guzik points out why Joshua needed to hear it. He wasn't just starting a new job. He had massive shoes to fill.
The biggest shoes imaginable. He had to follow Moses.
Right. Moses wasn't just a leader. He was the guy. He split the Red Sea. He brought down the 10 Commandments.
He spoke to God face to face.
Yeah.
And now he's gone.
John MacArthur points out the brutal reality of Joshua 1.2. The verse starts with just a harsh, cold fact. Moses, my servant, is dead.
Oof. Talk about ripping the Band-Aid off.
It's blunt. But MacArthur argues that this is necessary. The repetition of fear not, God says it 3 times in 4 verses, it acts as a waterfall of comfort.
And the key insight is this. The leader's dead, but the Lord is not.
That's the shift.
The human safety net Moses is gone. The buffer is gone. So God has to step in and say, okay, the prop is kicked away. Now it's just you and me. Fear not.
It's almost like the fear is a signal that we were relying on the wrong thing.
Exactly.
As long as Moses was there, they didn't need to trust God directly. They could just trust Moses.
Which leads us perfectly into the next big theme from our sources.
Mm.
If fear not isn't a suggestion, and it's not just positive thinking,
Right.
what is the actual theological why behind it?
Right. Because usually when I'm scared, the advice I get is all internal. Man up, dig deep, believe in yourself.
You've got this, the internal resource model.
Yeah.
But the theology of fear not is the exact opposite.
Yeah.
David Guzik makes this crucial distinction. He says, God doesn't say fear not because you are strong.
He says, fear not, for I am with you.
It's not about confidence, it's about company.
That's a great way to put it.
The Bible Project, specifically Tim Mackie, talks about this as the Emmanuel narrative. If you trace these verses through Scripture, the fear not is almost always followed immediately by the reason. Presence.
It's the with you factor.
Yes. And Mackie points out that humans are prone to forget God's presence the moment a crisis hits. It's like we have theological amnesia.
Mm-hmm. The moment the bill comes or the diagnosis comes, we feel instantly, profoundly alone.
And that loneliness is actually the oxygen for the fear.
Guzik draws a direct line there.
He does. He says we are prone to fear specifically when we feel alone. He looks at the phrase, be not dismayed in Isaiah. He says it effectively translates to, remember me.
So it's a cognitive jolt.
It's waking up to the fact that the God of power and glory is actually in the room.
It reminds me of that book Guzik referenced, Your God is Too Small by J.B. Phillips.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's a classic title. The premise is that when we are dismayed, when we are overwhelmed by the world, it is often because our concept of God has shrunk.
We've made him manageable, small, distant.
And a small God can't help you when you're facing a giant problem.
So the antidote to fear isn't trying to pump yourself up or create false confidence. It's resizing your view of God.
Exactly. If your God is big enough, the fear naturally shrinks. It's a measurement problem.
Now, speaking of viewing God, I want to talk about the imagery our sources use. Because Charles Spurgeon, man, nobody paints a picture with words like Spurgeon.
The Prince of Preachers. He really does bring the text to life.
He has this beautiful image where he describes the fear nots in the Bible as violets.
Violets.
Yeah, tiny violets growing in God's garden. He says they're plentiful. Everywhere you look in Scripture, there's another little violet saying, fear not.
I like that.
And he talks about how God planted these flowers specifically for the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, in their specific moments of trembling.
Which personalizes the history. We kind of think of the patriarchs as these marble statues of faith. But Spurgeon reminds us that Abraham was trembling after a battle, wondering if the enemy would come back. Isaac was afraid after losing his wells, his economic livelihood. Jacob was terrified before going down to Egypt.
They weren't superheroes. They were frightened men who needed to reach down and pick a violet.
And that connects us to them.
Mm-hmm.
If the fathers of the faith need the command, then we aren't failing when we need it to.
But then Spurgeon and Guzik, they both pivot to a much weirder and, I mean, frankly, kind of insulting image.
Oh, I know exactly where you're going. Isaiah 41.12.
Fear not, you worm, Jacob.
Yes, the worm.
I mean, come on, imagine you're in a therapy session, you're pouring out your anxiety, and the therapist says, don't worry, you worm.
You'd walk right out. Yeah.
I would walk out. So why? Why does God use that language?
It is jarring to modern ears.
Mm-hmm.
But David Guzik explains the contrast here beautifully. In the ancient world, and frankly in our world, a worm is the ultimate symbol of helplessness. It has no claws, no teeth, no venom, no speed. It lives in the dirt. If a foot comes down, the worm has zero mechanism for defense. It is purely fragile.
So God is acknowledging their state. He's saying, I know you feel defenseless. I know you feel like you're about to be crushed.
Right. He isn't gaslighting them by saying you're actually a lion. He agrees with their assessment of their own weakness. But catch the promise that follows. He says, "Fear not, you worm. I will make you into a new, sharp threshing instrument."
A threshing instrument. For those of us who aren't farmers, what are we talking about here?
Think of a heavy wooden sled with sharp stones or iron teeth on the bottom. It was dragged over grain to crush the husks. It was a machine of force.
Okay.
And in the metaphor, God says this instrument will thresh the mountains.
So God takes the worm, the weakest thing imaginable, and transforms it into a machine that crushes mountains.
Exactly. The contrast is the point.
Hmm.
Guzik argues that this proves the fear not command is specifically for the weak. It's not for the naturally brave. If you feel like a worm, you are the perfect candidate for this verse.
That is actually really comforting. It means my weakness isn't a barrier to God using me. It's the prerequisite.
Precisely.
But Spurgeon has one more image that I found. Well, honestly, it gave me chills. It's darker, but it's so profound. It connects this Old Testament idea to the Jesus narrative we look for in the Bible's most quoted.
The bloody footprints.
Yeah. Can you explain that one?
This is Spurgeon connecting Isaiah to the gospel. He argues that we can fear not because we can see the bloody footprints of Jesus on the path ahead of us.
Wow.
He calls Jesus the man of sorrows. The idea is that Jesus hasn't just commanded us to go into this scary territory from the safety of heaven. He came down. He walked the path of suffering.
He faced rejection, pain, death.
So when we look at the scary road ahead, we aren't looking at untouched snow. We are seeing his footprints.
He has broken the trail. That's the ultimate basis for fearlessness.
Right. We aren't just comforted because he is with us. We are comforted because he has gone before us. He knows the way through the valley of the shadow of death because he's already been there.
That really changes the tone of the command. It's not a drill sergeant yelling at you to move.
No.
It's a guide saying, follow me, I know the way.
It creates a sense of safety amidst the danger.
Speaking of safety, I want to zoom in on one last detail from Isaiah 41. It's the anatomy of the hand. We saw this in the video transcript from David Guzik.
Yes.
There is this weirdly specific back and forth about right hands.
It's a brilliant observation. If you read the text carefully, there is a double handshake happening.
A double handshake. Okay, break it down for us.
First, in verse 10, God says, "I will uphold you with my righteous right hand."
Okay, so that's God's hand.
Right. And in biblical imagery, the right hand is the hand of strength, of skill, of authority. A soldier holds a sword in the right hand. So God is saying, I've got you. My strength is under you, holding you up structurally.
It's the floor you stand on, but then it shifts.
Yes. In verse 13, God says, "For I, the Lord your God, will hold your right hand."
So first he holds us up with his hand, then he holds our hand.
Exactly. And think about the relational difference. The first one, upholding, is about security. It's keeping you from falling. But holding your right hand, that's intimacy. That's what a father does with a child crossing the street.
Or a friend guiding you through the dark.
Guzik points out that this is a transfer of strength. It's not just God holding us from a distance. It's a relational hand-holding that transfers strength to the worm.
I love that. It's like, have you ever tried to do something scary, like walk across a high log or get a shot at the doctor and someone just holds your hand?
Yeah.
You don't suddenly get better balance physically, but mentally, everything settles down.
That's the psychological effect of the with you promise.
Yeah.
And the text says the result of this hand-holding is fascinating. It says that those who are incensed against you shall be as nothing.
Non-existent, I think one translation said.
Yes. It's almost as if when you are holding God's hand, the things you are terrified of, the enemies, the problems, they just fade into transparency. They lose their substance.
The fear of the enemy vanishes because the awareness of the hand increases. That is, man, that's good stuff. It's shifting the focus from the problem to the solution.
It really is.
So let's try to land this plane and summarize what we've uncovered here. We started with that staggering number 300 plus commands.
Which tells us that fear is the default human setting. We are naturally anxious.
Right. We talked about Gary Hamrick's F.E.A.R, false events appear real.
That we're often suffering from hallucinations of a future that hasn't happened.
And we established that fear not is a command that comes with enablement. God supplies the power to obey it.
We looked at the context of Joshua, that Moses is dead, but God is not. The human prompts fall away so we can lean on the real thing.
We unpacked the worm, Jacob, that God's power is perfected in our absolute weakness, and the bloody footprints of Jesus showing us the way.
And finally, that double handshake, God upholding us with power and holding our hand with intimacy.
It's a comprehensive theology. It moves fear from a problem of lack of courage to a problem of lack of attention. But before we go, there is one last thing from Spurgeon that I think we have to mention. It's a bit of a challenge. Honestly, it's a bit of a gut punch.
The Spurgeon challenge. I know the one. He does not pull punches.
No, he really doesn't.
Spurgeon argues that ultimately, to fear, to stay in that state of paralyzed anxiety, is actually a sin.
That sounds harsh. Stop sinning by being scared. It feels like kicking someone when they're down.
But listen to his logic. He calls the sin of sins. He says that when we fear, we are acting as if God is not true.
Wow.
We are effectively saying to God, you are not with me. You are not the God of glory. You don't really love me.
So fear is basically calling God a liar.
In Spurgeon's view, yes. He says, if he is not fit to be believed, neither is he fit to be adored.
If we can't trust him with our fears, why are we worshiping him?
Exactly. It's a call to examine our unbelief.
That hits hard. But it's a good kind of heavy. It raises the stakes. It means fighting fear isn't just about my mental health or my comfort.
It's about your worship. Precisely. It's about honoring the character of the God who's holding your right hand.
Well, that gives us plenty to think about. It certainly takes the coffee mug verse and gives it some serious weight.
It certainly does.
So here is our final thought for you to chew on as you go about your day. We've established that God repeats fear not because we are prone to forget his presence. We get amnesia.
Right. We forget who is in the room.
So, if the antidote to fear isn't trying to be braver, but trying to be more attentive, try asking yourself this question the next time the anxiety spikes. Who is holding your hand right now?
Not what is facing me, but who is holding me.
Exactly. Shift the focus from the face of the enemy to the face of the Father.
That changes everything.
Thanks for diving depth with us today. We hope you feel a little less like a worm, or at least a worm with a very strong friend.
See you in the next deep dive.
These verses endure because they speak truth into real life. Thank you for joining me on the Bible's Most Quoted Verses podcast. I'm Gary Palmer. Until next time, may God's word continue to guide and bless you.